I'm going to begin where I left off, um, but go back a little. Erickson's observations on identity formation have been usefully extended by James Marsh's notion of identity statuses. Identity statuses, of which there are four, reflect the extent to which individuals have explored and committed themselves to a set of values on such critical issues as occupation, religion, sex role, and politics. Marcia developed this idea as a way to test scientifically the validity of Erickson's notions about identity. Marcia established the four identity statuses after he had conducted semi-structured interviews with a selected sample of male youths. The interviewees were asked their thoughts about a career, their personal value system, their sexual attitudes, and their religious beliefs. Marcia proposed that attainment of a mature identity depends on two variables: crisis and commitment. Crisis refers to times during adolescence when the individual seems to be actively involved in choosing among alternative occupations and beliefs. Commitment refers to the degree of personal investment the individual expresses in an occupation or belief. After analyzing interview records with these two criteria in mind, Marcia established four identity statuses described in Table 2.1, which vary in their degree of crisis and commitment: identity diffusion, foreclosure, moratorium, identity achievement. Marcia's concept of identity statuses is well supported by research. You can see this for yourself when you compare the findings of each study below with our brief description of the identity statuses in Table 2.1. Adolescents move into the identity achievement status gradually and in relatively small numbers because many early adolescents, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, have not yet grappled with identity issues. They cannot be put into one of Marcia's categories. Of those who can be classified, most are likely to be either in the diffusion or foreclosure statuses. College students who were either in the identity achievement or moratorium status were more likely to exhibit helping behaviors and be motivated intrinsically than were individuals in the diffusion status. Adolescents who had reached the identity achievement status, actively exploring various occupations, beliefs, and value systems, and then making a commitment, were better adjusted and happier than their peers. Scoring somewhat lower on adjustment scales were those in the moratorium and foreclosure statuses. Those in the diffusion status tended to have the most serious adjustment problems. Adolescents in the foreclosure status were more likely to engage in romantic relationships than their identity diffusion peers and were less likely to feel anxious about such relationships as compared to peers in the moratorium and identity achievement statuses. As you read the brief descriptions of each identity type in Table 2.1, keep a few points in mind. First, identity achievement status evolves gradually over a period of years, 10 or more in many cases, and may only occur among a relatively small percentage of individuals. Second, an identity status is not a once-and-for-all accomplishment. Identity can continue to undergo a developmental change in adulthood. If an ego-shattering event, the loss of a job, a divorce, occurs later in life, individuals who have reached identity achievement, for example, may find themselves uncertain about old values and behavior patterns, and once again in crisis. But for most individuals, a new view of oneself is eventually created. This cycling between certainty and doubt as to who one is and where one fits in society may well occur in each of the last three of Erickson's stages, and is often referred to as a MAMA, moratorium achievement cycle. Finally, after 40 years of research on identity, James Marcia reminds us that individuals are an amalgam of their experiences. Thus, their identities reflect a mixture of identity statuses. Table 2.1, James Marcia's identity statuses. Identity status, identity diffusion, crisis not yet experienced, little serious thought given to occupation, gender roles, values. Commitment, weak. Ideas about occupation, gender roles, values are easily changed as a result of positive and negative feedback. Characteristics, not self-directed, disorganized, impulsive, low self-esteem, alienated from parents, avoids getting involved in schoolwork and interpersonal relationships. The next identity status, foreclosure, not experienced, may suffer doubts about identity issues. The crisis is not experienced. The commitment is strong, it has accepted and endorsed the values of his or her parents. The characteristics, closed-minded, authoritarian, low in anxiety, has difficulty solving problems under stress, feels superior to peers, more dependent on parents and other authority figures for guidance and approval than in other statuses. The identity status of moratorium. The crisis is partially experienced, has given some thought to identity-related questions. The commitment is weak, has not achieved satisfactory answers. The characteristics, anxious, dissatisfied with school, changes major, often, daydreams, engages in intense but short-lived relationships, may temporarily reject parental and societal values. The identity status of identity achievement. The crisis is fully experienced, has considered and explored alternative positions regarding occupation, gender roles, and values. The commitment is strong, has made self-chosen commitments to at least some aspects of identity. And the characteristics are introspective, more planful, rational, and logical in decision-making than in other identity statuses. High self-esteem, works effectively under stress, likely to form close interpersonal relationships, usually the last identity status to emerge. Cultural, ethnic, and gender factors in identity status. Although the foreclosure status is the historical norm for adolescents in Western societies, things can and do change. For example, individuals in moratorium were more numerous during the 1960s and 70s than during the 80s. This was a time of great social and cultural upheaval, opposition to the war in Vietnam, civil rights demonstrations, the women's movement, and many adolescents reacted to the uncertainty produced by these changes by not making a commitment to occupational, sexual, and political values. Also, more recent evidence indicates that adolescents are now more likely to be in a moratorium status or an identity achievement status or in transition between these two statuses than in the foreclosure status common to earlier generations. Gender differences in identity status are most apparent in the areas of political ideology, family and career priorities, and sexuality. With respect to political beliefs, males are more likely to exhibit a foreclosure process and females a diffusion process. With respect to family and career priorities and sexualities, males are likely to be foreclosed or diffuse, whereas females are likely to express an identity achievement or moratorium status. These findings indicate that female adolescents are more likely than males to make developmentally advanced decisions in the area of family and career roles and sexuality. A likely explanation has to do with how the female gender role has and has not changed over the past 20 years. Although most females now work outside the home, they are still expected to have primary responsibility for child rearing. A relevant question to ask about Marcia's identity statuses, particularly if you plan to teach in a foreign country or instruct students with different cultural backgrounds, is whether these identity statuses occur only in the United States. The answer appears to be no. Researchers in such diverse countries as Korea, India, Nigeria, Japan, Denmark, Holland, Colombia, and Haiti report finding all four statuses, although the percentage of adolescents and young adults in each status does vary by culture. As you consider how diversity interacts with student identity, it is important not to confuse identity statuses with other aspects of identity. One example is ethnic identity. As the ethnic composition of the United States, in which children of color will eventually outnumber white children, changes, more research is being done on the development of ethnic identity. The work on identity status is one way to understand how identity can shift during the middle and high school years. In other chapters, we will discuss other aspects of background and environment that contribute to more important developmental outcome, one's sense of identity. Criticism of Erikson's theory. Although Erikson's theory has in general been supported by research, several aspects have been criticized. For example, while Erikson occasionally carried out research investigations, most of his conclusions were based on personal and subjective interpretations that have been only partially substantiated by controlled investigations of the type that most psychologists value. Consequently, his theory is viewed by many as a descriptive overview of social and emotional development that does not adequately explain how and why this development takes place. Other criticisms focus on Erikson's contention that one's identity is achieved by actively exploring alternatives regarding one's career, ideological beliefs, and interpretation and interpersonal relationships, and then making choices. This is not, in all likelihood, a universal practice. In some societies and cultures, these decisions are, for the most part, made by adults and imposed on adolescents. There appear to be two basic societal conditions that make it possible for individuals to explore and construct an identity: the willingness to tolerate an extended adolescence that makes a minimal contribution to society, and a certain level of societal wealth. In addition, individuals need to have developed secure attachments to parents and other influential individuals, successful resolution of the trust versus mistrust stage, and a high level of cognitive development. The absence of these last two conditions may account for the fact that by adulthood only 33% of individuals have undergone the exploration and construction processes that characterize the moratorium and achievement statuses. Such critics, such as Carol Gilligan, argue that Erikson's stages reflect the personality development of males more accurately than that of females. Gilligan believes that the process and timing of identity formation are different for each gender. Beginning in about 4th grade, the industry versus inferiority stage, girls are as concerned with the nature of interpersonal relationships as they are with achievement, whereas boys focus mainly on achievement. And during adolescence, many young women seem to work through the crises of identity and intimacy simultaneously, whereas most young men follow the sequence that Erikson described: identity versus role confusion, then intimacy versus isolation. The validity of Gilligan's argument is considered to be unsettled, as the recent research, which included more females than males, supports Erikson's original sequence. If you keep these reservations in mind, you are likely to discover that Erikson's observations, as well as the identity statuses that Marcia described, clarify important aspects of development. Suggestions for teaching that draw on Erikson's observations follow. Applying Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Keep in mind that certain types of behaviors and relationships may be of special significance at different age levels. With younger preschool children, allow plenty of opportunities for free play and experimentation to encourage the development of autonomy, but provide guidance to reduce the possibility that children will experience doubt. Also, avoid shaming children for unacceptable behavior. With older preschool children, encourage activities that permit the use of initiative and provide a sense of accomplishment. Avoid making children feel guilty about well-motivated but inconvenient questions or actions, inconvenient to you. During the elementary and middle school years, help children experience a sense of industry by presenting tasks that they can complete successfully. Arrange such tasks so that students will know that they have been successful. To limit feelings of inferiority, play down comparisons and encourage cooperation and self-competition. Also try to help jealous children gain satisfaction from their own behavior. Specific ways to accomplish these goals are described in later chapters. At the high school level, recognize that there are benefits to helping students develop a sense of who they are and how they fit into adult society. The components of identity that Erickson stressed are acceptance of one's appearance, knowledge about where one is going, and recognition from those who count. Role confusion is most frequently caused by failure to formulate clear ideas about gender roles and by indecision about occupational choice. Helping students develop a positive identity and avoid role confusion is a worthwhile use of your time because it contributes to such basic goals as high levels of achievement, teaching students how to work productively with others, and helping students understand the relevance of schooling to various career paths. There are several things you can do to help students develop a positive identity. You can, for example, recognize them as individuals by praising both their accomplishments, however modest they may be compared to those of other students, and by praising them for their potential. Second, you can create a classroom environment that fosters an identity achievement status. You might, for example, try being more tolerant of behaviors that are more unorthodox than what you would see in younger students. You can also create lesson plans and assignments that allow students to use capabilities they possess and value. Third, you can help them clarify their ideas about gender roles by having class discussions, in other words, or for example, in social science courses, about changes in attitudes regarding masculinity, femininity, and family responsibilities. You can, for example, encourage boys to become more sensitive to the needs of others, and girls to be more achievement-oriented. This approach to gender role development that combines traditional masculine and feminine behaviors is called psychological androgyny. Another forum for such discussion is an online bulletin board or class website. Online writing can be conducive to explorations of sensitive issues because it provides a slightly slower, more thoughtful pace, and also offers an equal voice to male and female students, even those who feel shy about speaking in class. An online discussion that is carefully moderated by an experienced teacher can both model and explore the territory of psychological androgyny. Remember that the aimlessness of some students may be evidence that they are engaging in a psychosocial moratorium. If possible, encourage such individuals to focus on short-term goals while they continue to search for long-term goals. There are many ways to enable students to work towards short-term goals, particularly in your classroom. These will be described in detail in later chapters that deal with approaches to instruction and motivation. Use technology to help adolescents define and develop their political values. While many adolescents spend a considerable amount of time thinking about and developing their social, occupational, religious, and sexual values, the same cannot be said about their political values. It is the rare adolescent who is informed about current political events, votes, attends city council or board of education meetings, writes letters to the local newspaper, or participates in a candidate's political campaign. One reason for this seeming lack of interest is the perception that one individual, working alone, can do little to change the policies and actions of others, a view held by many adults as well. The use of technology, particularly social media, can change that. In one community, a high school student recruited 18,000 students through a Facebook post to protest cuts to the state education budget. As part of a social studies or government class, teachers can encourage a greater awareness of and participation in political issues by, for example, having students create online discussion groups and or blogs around various local, state, and national issues. Political speeches can be viewed on YouTube, circulated among classmates, friends, and family, and commented on. Does encouraging this sort of activity raise political awareness and action? One survey found that students who engaged in participatory politics were twice as likely to have said they voted than students who did not.